Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something along the way. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. If you're enjoying the conversations here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching or listening. Also, if you or someone you know like to come on and have a chat with me, feel free to reach out to me on whatever social media platform you're on. And the way to find out if I'm on there or not, if you go to isaacrilevin.com, you'll see a list of all the places I'm in. To be frank, there's too many, and I don't check all of them, but I look at notifications. So send me a message. With that out of the way, I don't do this often where I have somebody come back and chat with me about what's been going on. But, this person, let's just, it's Kat Cosgrove. I don't know how you could not have this person on again. Hey, Kat.
Hey, how's it going?
Do you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. My name is Kat Cosgrove. I am Head of Developer Advocacy at Minimus. I'm also a Kubernetes maintainer with quite a lot of hats, and I think I wasn't a maintainer last time. I think I was just a Kubernetes contributor.
You might have been on one of the
committees.
You might have been one of the committees, but yeah.
I think I was on the release team.
Yeah.
But I was not a maintainer because this was 2021 or 2020. It was during COVID. The first time I was on here.
Oh, it was like we were in the throes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get you the exact date.
So yeah, I was on the release team, but I was definitely not a maintainer. I think it was around the Docker shim deprecation
Yes.
drama.
Yeah, I think we actually talked about that. It was September of 2021. So, I mean, it wasn't at peak COVID, but it was like, let's still stay inside.
Yeah, so it was the Docker shim thing. But yeah, I'm a Kubernetes maintainer now with a lot of hats.
Yeah, I mean,
for better or for worse.
And I'd love to kind of have a conversation about, obviously, microservices and Kubernetes and containerization and kind of the cycle that it's been on over the last 5 years. But I want to start off with usually we start the show with how you got started, but we've done that. So it's what's new? What is something that you've seen recently that you're just over the last 5 years that you're like, I love tech again because of this?
So when you try to improve something for a really long time in small incremental ways, eventually somebody just gives it to you, and now you've stared into the void and now the void is your problem entirely. Yeah. That happened to me with Kubernetes, and I found that being unafraid of starting shit with people with significantly more power than me was an asset in an open source project, and it made Kubernetes fun again, significantly more fun. So I was on the release team for a billion years, and then I led a release that I called Uwubernetes, which pissed off a lot of people on Reddit, which I consider a career highlight for me. Upsetting Redditors. They were so mad about the name of that release. And they made me the Release Team Subproject owner. So I've gotten to implement a bunch of sweeping improvements to the way the Kubernetes release works. And now it takes about 10 fewer people to cut a Kubernetes release over the course of a 3-month cycle. And we're getting significantly more enhancements in per release. Just by, I don't know, walking into a room and saying, this sucks, this is dumb, this is a waste of everybody's time and energy. It creates a lot of unnecessary friction. What if we do it this way instead? And I did that for long enough that I won a seat on the steering committee. So now, unfortunately, I am driving the whole boat, for better or worse. But seeing the internals of the way a project of this size works is both interesting and horrifying. So it doesn't work as well as you think it does. As we make it look, it does. Yeah, unfortunately. But
I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, I think it's safe to say Kubernetes is a non-trivial product, right? If you want to call it a product, right?
At this point.
But it's one of those things too where it's not just the product itself, it's the ecosystem, right? And that's what's always fascinating to me, specifically about Kubernetes. And I don't want to say that cloud native computing was kind of based on top of kind of the principles of Kubernetes, but a lot of people directly correlate Kubernetes with a bunch of other things that are now kind of commonplace in tech. And I think one of the questions that I have for you, just overarching as it pertains to Kubernetes, is, from a steering committee or from a release committee's perspective, like how much attention do you have to pay to the landscape of Kubernetes and just like okay, there's this new plugin that's coming, there's this new
Mhm.
apparatus that's using is it a wrapper? Like how do you have to pay attention to kind of the street of the Kubernetes ecosystem?
Not a ton. From the release team's perspective, we don't care about literally anything other than releasing Kubernetes.
Mm,
What is relying on Kubernetes, we care less about. Besides, like we don't want to break things for our users, right? So like all we care about is not breaking people's clusters. And making the process better and more reliable over time. We don't actually care about like some new project that uses Kubernetes as a foundation as much in the context of the release team. In the context of the steering committee, um, we also mostly care about Kubernetes itself, but we do like kind of look around at the ecosystem and go, how might this affect upstream Kubernetes at some
yeah,
point? But otherwise, no, we're very focused on Kubernetes itself. The body that would care about stuff outside of Kubernetes and how it interacts with it would be the Technical Oversight Committee,
sure.
which belongs to the CNCF. And they care, but they don't like outrank the Kubernetes Steering Committee. We kind of like sit at equal levels, but like on opposite sides of a chasm, I guess. Like we talk to each other, but they can't tell us what to do and we can't tell them
Yeah.
what to do, sort of thing. So Kubernetes gets to stay like an island, kind of.
Yeah.
And if the other islands want to like, I don't know, come over for a vacation, they can. If they decide they want to stay, they can. But we're not like, I don't know, trying to govern what happens on
Yeah.
other islands.
Yeah, there's not like a ton of coupling, right? Like you're not deeply coupled
No.
or even loosely coupled to it, right? Like there's healthy conversations, but it's not something that one team can kind of superset another team in decision making process. And I can't even really think of a
Yeah.
scenario where it would be like, one committee is like this has to happen, and then all the other committees are like, no, but fine, right? Because that's not really
Yeah.
how the world works in general. But I
Yeah. The only time that really happens is like there's some like sometimes the Security Response Committee, the SRC, can uh make demands of the steering
sure,
committee and the steering committee can make demands of the SRC, but ultimately we have to agree,
yeah.
right?
But those are like I mean, I guess that's fair, but that's also like I mean, I've been I this is funny because I've had some security folks on the show recently, and it's like security is always kind of like the bad person in the relationship.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like they're there to help you and they just get knives thrown at them. Right. So
Yeah, I feel bad for them.
yeah, of course. Like, I mean, and they're all lovely people, but I think you need to have like a very specific mindset to every room you walk into, people look at you like you smell bad, right? Um,
Yeah.
which I mean, again, here some heroes don't wear capes. Um, I think one thing that I would love to kind of get from you too, it's like obviously people and not just people, but companies have like
Mm,
they're heavily dependent on the work that Kubernetes does, right?
yep.
Like the Kubernetes project. And I would love to kind of like, obviously this is the biggest companies in the world. How does that relationship happen? And you can be as transparent or as non-transparent as you want. Like
Mhm.
big company doesn't have to be a hyperscaler. Let's just be clear. It doesn't have to be AWS or Microsoft or Google or whatever. Comes to the Kubernetes community says we need this or I would
Mhm.
love to have this. Like how much is that taken into account versus obviously the typical rhythm of trimming a backlog?
Um, they don't get any more priority than anybody else does.
Sure.
Um, it's an open source project. If Google wants something or Cisco wants something or whoever wants something, PR is welcome, baby.
Yeah.
I personally am I have a beef with a lot of big companies and the way they interact with open source in general, because they do tend to I mean, some of them have teams that exist purely to contribute to open
Sure.
source,
Sure.
right? And that's great. And I love that, and I would love to see more of that. But others do not. And instead, what they do is they just donate a bunch of money to the CNCF or whoever, or they donate money directly to the project, which is also great, but it's never enough. And they do not donate back time. A lot of times what we need is not money,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
bodies. We need people doing this stuff, because we often aren't donated enough money to hire people full time to do the
Yeah.
work that needs to be done. We saw this like super recently in two situations with Ingress Engine X, which is being sunset because it had two maintainers in spite of years of begging, and it's something like close to 40% of cloud native environments rely directly on Ingress Engine X. And you're telling me that none of you with your like billions of dollars in profit a
Yeah.
year could throw some people at
Yeah.
maintaining this? Same deal with External Secrets Operator, which is a sandbox CNCF project. They, their words, not mine, publicly blackmailed their users and
Mhm.
threatened to stop cutting releases because they didn't have enough maintainers. They don't need money, they need bodies. So, like, if big company wants some feature in Kubernetes or whatever open source project, it doesn't matter, open the PR.
Yeah.
Do the work. Like, do the work. And if the work is good, we're happy to merge it. But you're not going to be able to come to the steering committee and say, hey, we demand this feature in Kubernetes and expect us to just like find people for it for
Yeah.
you. You know, they don't try anymore. I'm sure that they used to,
Sure.
but not a thing. You do still see that on like other open source projects though. People will just open an issue and just like demand some feature, and it's like, okay, like,
Yeah.
what do you want me to do about
Yeah.
it?
I think too, obviously to go back to you've been around Kubernetes for long enough to see it,
Yeah.
be a somewhat well recognized project to
Hmm.
the project
Yeah.
to, and then kind of like the reverse hype cycle where it's like, oh, we don't really need Kubernetes, even though everybody tells us we need Kubernetes. And now it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of at the stable state where it, if you go into the right circles, it's still talked about frequently, but obviously
Hmm.
AI is taking over a lot of the conversation in tech. I'd love to kind of, get your opinion as like what that cycle was like as for somebody that was like behind the curtain, like, like the Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz, so to speak, or the, the Witch of Oz. Like, you know, the, how is, obviously going through that massive hype cycle and then kind of
Yeah.
the detox of that. What was that like for people that were like inside, like working on the project?
It was weird
Yeah.
because a lot of us, especially for the people who have been around even longer than I have, people who have been around since like day one, we all know each other and we're all friends for the most part. Like we'll go hang out at conferences and get drinks and not talk about work. So it's easy for us to like not see how big it really is.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where we had to accept that Kubernetes is enormous, and it's now something people want to be involved in, not because they find the technology interesting or because they like problem solving or they like the community of open source, but because they want the clout. And that
Hmm.
was a particular struggle with the release team, where we've figured out that a lot of people like the release team is the easiest way, easiest air quotes, way to get involved in Kubernetes and get
Sure.
like org membership because it's the only part of the project that has an open application process. You just apply to be on the release team 3 times a year, and also like written down step-by-step instructions of what you're going to do for 3 months. So it's there's no ambiguity involved in the release team. And we had to realize and accept that like most of the people were applying not because they wanted to do it, but because they wanted Kubernetes release team on their resume.
Sure.
It's a career builder for them, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. To be clear, I think it's fine. I think it's great. Even it's kind of flattering, but it did require us to like think differently about how we select people and think
Yeah.
differently about the role of the release team in the rest of the project. So now we treat it as like an on ramp for contributing in other parts of the project because we noticed that people were applying, getting on the release team, and not sticking around to shadow in future releases. They were doing it once
Interesting.
to get it on their resume, once to get the org membership, and then just kind of disappearing. So now we actively mentor people into like, here's like other places in the project where we need help, and here's the kind of help they need, and here's how you can like go get involved. Um, but none of them are as flashy as the release team, so it's
Sure.
still like kind of a struggle. But yeah, we had to undergo some like, I don't know, a little bit of a grief cycle, I guess,
Yeah.
for the way Kubernetes used to be as a community, and accept that we are in fact a cloud farm now too.
Yeah, it's funny that you the way you were phrasing it, like it triggers like I don't know if you ever fell into like the certificate way of thinking where it's like, oh, I get certs, and then I could put those on my
Yeah.
resume or I could put them on my LinkedIn, and then people who when they do searches, they'll see my profile, they'll see my
Yeah.
stuff, right? I kind of it's
Hmm.
the way you're describing it sounds very
Feels
very
like that.
yeah, it sounds very very similar to that where it's like it doesn't have like a ton of like intrinsical value like after you've done it but it kind of lingers there as an artifact for long enough to like give you a little bit of street cred. Um,
Yeah.
one thing that I find interesting too that like you mentioned kind of like the what like I don't want and this is probably the a crass way of saying it. There's like glamour in like certain areas of Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like
Definitely.
you're talking about like the release team being like, oh, it's somewhat in air quotes like easy to get into,
Yeah.
and but I also think that it's kind of funny because you for what it's worth, you're kind of like the person to get the thing to the people, right?
Yeah.
Because
It's definitely the most glamorous role in the project.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like like for instance, like how often does Kubernetes ship? Like an actual version, not like a a dot release or something, but like an actual like legit. Oh, it affects a lot of people sort of version.
3 times a year.
Yeah. So, and I happened to look the other day because I was genuinely curious. It's like, oh, you do like it sees like 100 releases a week. Not exactly 100 releases a week, but you do enough,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's not a trivial amount of work, right? Like
Yep.
because it's not like people just literally go to kubernetes.com and click download. There's plenty of ways to get Kubernetes, depending on what OS you're running,
Yep.
what your situation is, right? If you're using it and as a wrapper, or wrapped by other things, right? Um, but you only really care about the actual bits. Is that fair to
Yeah.
say? Yeah. Like, and
Yeah.
then is there another team that's their responsibility to kind of go out to all of the other actors and say, hey, like we have a new version, or is their responsibility to kind of constantly polling?
It's their responsibility. So, like the hyperscalers, for instance, we don't build for them. That's
Sure.
their
Yeah.
problem. Like we publish the artifacts, but if they want like specialty versions or whatever, like AKS has to build their own. Like
Yeah.
that's on them. We have nothing to do with that. And the responsibility for building Kubernetes, who that lies on depends on what type of version we're talking about. Like minor releases of Kubernetes, those are handled by the Kubernetes release team 3 times a year. But patch releases, like the monthly patches, the release team doesn't do those. Release engineering does those, and it's just like whatever release manager is available does those. I think Marco is doing them today. He's doing a 132 patch release today. But yeah, entirely different teams. And release engineering, the people cutting the patches, they don't get that like glamour. They don't get the clout. Only the teams handling the minor releases do, which I think is a little stupid.
Sure.
But like release engineering is always kind of understaffed, and the release team itself never understaffed. We
Because
get
of
like
yeah.
200 we get like 200 applicants every 3 months for about 20 spots.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. Um, so if you were to kind of aggregate the amount of effort that you put into like on a monthly basis, like between meetings, between miscellaneous
Hmm.
things, between crafting notes or whatever you have to do as a part of kind of that rhythm, like how many hours of cat time do you put into this?
Ooh.
And I know it
Okay,
probably
I
and it
will
probably and I
say,
know it probably varies depending, right? Like you might
yeah.
have like something big, something a little bit smaller, and those are obviously take different amount of time. But I'm
Yeah.
just generally curious, like a rough estimate.
Yeah. This week it is more than usual because this week is a release week.
Yeah.
We're releasing 135 tomorrow. So this week it's a little bit more than usual, but in general, it's, I don't know, maybe like 10-ish hours a week. Between it's more now that I'm on the steering committee because I go to every steering committee member has SIGs that they're the liaison for, and I go to those SIGs meetings in addition to the release team meetings, the steering committee meetings, and then my actual job. I will say that I'm very lucky in that my actual job considers this to be part of my job.
Mm,
So I do all of this on company time. I'm not doing it in my spare time. It does make my hours weird
yeah.
because it's like it's a globally distributed team, right? So like sometimes I have to take calls on European time or on time. Sometimes I have to take calls on APAC time. So it's not unusual for me to need to be in a work call at like 11 p.m. or at like 4 in the morning or something. That happens like maybe once a month. But like broadly, I'd say it's about 10 hours of any given work week. It's just at weird times.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily Monday through Friday. Sometimes I have to take a lot of the time I have to do work on weekends. And does not change when I'm on PTO, unfortunately.
Sure.
So like I am taking next week off from Minimus and in fact the rest of the year because my birthday is New Year's Eve and I have like a policy about not working around my birthday. But open source does not care that I am
Yeah.
on PTO. I
Yeah.
still have shit to do. Um, if I am actually on vacation, then I do not answer Slack and somebody else will cover for me. But yeah, generally 10-ish hours. Not too bad. You know, like
Yeah.
that could be way
Oh, for
worse.
sure. And I mean, if you think about it, you extrapolate that out, like, you're not the only person, right? So there,
No,
like, this scales out to tens, twenties of people, right? Like, so it's a um trivial amount of work just to get
yeah,
some, binaries in a place for people to actually consume, right? Which
yeah.
which, shipping like large software has always been fascinating to me, just not because of like the boulder that has to get pushed up the hill from like a technical perspective, but also it's like the politics of it, right? Where it's like,
Oh
okay, is
yeah.
this going into this release? No. Is this going into this release? It's done. Why can't it go into this release? Because silly. It doesn't work like that. So I mean, like, and I imagine everybody who works on the Kubernetes project is just a lovely human being. Everybody gets along, no arguments ever. But like, I would love to, yeah,
Totally.
right. But I, so when there is kind of conflict as it pertains
Mhm.
to what goes into where and how it goes into it, like, what are those conversations typically like? Is it an engineer, somebody who actually wrote the code who advocates for themselves? Is they kind of like a product manager or
Mhm.
somebody who kind of is looking at backlog and trying to figure out that? Like, what are the different personas that go into that conversation, and what's typically their opinion?
Sure. So we end up with, so we do end up with a lot of like big egos clashing, unfortunately. It's
There's no
becoming
egos in
less of a
tech.
problem
There's no
now.
egos in tech.
Yeah, no, no, I've never, absolutely never met somebody with an ego the size of Jupiter, um, in my career. Doesn't happen. Everybody's very humble, and respectful of other people's time and opinions. But we typically end up with arguments between the some representative of the release team. It doesn't really matter whether it's a shadow or a sub team lead or the release lead themselves, and then either a SIG lead or the contributor who wrote the code themselves.
Mm,
And if the beef is with the contributor that wrote the code themselves, usually the SIG lead gets called in pretty quickly to mediate the argument. But almost always these arguments are around deadlines. So the release team imposes a whole bunch of deadlines on the 3 month long cycle or 4 month long cycle to make sure that things happen safely and sanely. Um, and historically, some of the deadlines we have now have not existed, and there's been some friction around us introducing new ones. Usually, it is around documentation.
mm,
We do not allow user facing changes. So, like anything a user or a cluster admin can touch into Kubernetes unless that change has docs. period, full stop. You have to have them. And so there are a bunch of deadlines within the release project related to documentation. There's one for you have to have a placeholder PR open. You have to have your docs ready to review, and then you have to have your docs ready to merge. And if you miss that last one, docs freeze, the ready to, it needs to be merged deadline, you have to file an exception request and you have to ask us for permission to merge this late by some number of days. You have to tell us how many days you want. And usually the conflict is around that because people disagree about whether or not something needs documentation. And in every instance, we have won that fight because the release team, for better or for worse, we only have two weapons we can use when we need to make a SIG lead or an enhancement owner comply with our rules. And those are to pull the enhancement from the release, which is really hard for us to
Yeah.
do towards the end of the cycle. It involves like unwinding a lot of PRs because at that point we're already past code freeze, and it's actually more dangerous for us to pull a KEP once code freeze is passed. So we've never had to do it. We have had to threaten it. The other weapon we have is to block the release, and that one is a nuke. But that is the threat that we use the most often because it's the least dangerous. It is also most impactful.
Sure.
If we tell some enhancement owner or SIG lead that like, hey, you do have to document this, and we're not going to release Kubernetes until you document this. We send that email to dev at, so everybody in the project, everybody who's ever contributed to Kubernetes and remained on that mailing list gets a notification that this specific SIG and this specific KEP is blocking the release. And the I don't know, the public nature of that
Sure.
usually forces people to comply, but that happens less and less often now. It was a pretty big issue for a while, but a few months ago, before I was elected to steering, we had a huge problem with a contributor who'd been around for a really long time and had a lot of power, trying to push us around on that and like publicly trying to force the release team to violate its own rules. And so the steering committee sent out an email to all that was like, hey, just FYI, during an active release cycle, the whole project has to listen to SIG release. Like, they make the rules during a release cycle, and if they tell you that this is the way it is, that's the way it is.
Yeah. I
And so
mean,
it kind of stopped happening.
yeah, well, it's funny because I immediately think of like, because obviously getting public, I mean, it is not this, but it's kind of a public shaming to extent, right?
It is.
Right.
Yeah, no,
But
that's absolutely part of why we do that.
But on the flip side, like, could you imagine like the power one has to like I can stop Kubernetes from shipping, right?
Yeah,
Because I think there is a lot like if you are a type of individual who gets to the point where you're pushing hard enough where you get that threat, there's probably a little inkling in that person's brain that is like, it could be all because of me, right?
yeah,
And I just find that sort of that whole concept fascinating that for what it's worth, it is not a small project, and there are thousands of people that work on it. Like, if whether they're
yep.
consuming it or they're using like, and the fact that one person or maybe a handful of people could just stop it from happening, and it is fascinating to me a little bit. Did I lose you?
I lost my headphones briefly.
No worries. Um, if you can't hear me, I'm just gonna just talk. That's fine.
I can. There we
Okay.
go.
Okay. Cool. I don't know if you heard anything of what I just said. Um, but I think that the general idea that it's like one person can derail the work of all these
Yeah,
people, like there is a bit of, especially for people that want attention, there's a lot of that for that individual.
yeah. Yeah, they're definitely getting attention when that happens, for sure. And we're the second largest open source project in the world behind Linux.
Never heard of it.
Um, never heard of it. It's a small, it's a little computer thing. Like they keep trying to run on desktop computers, but it's not working yet. A lot of problems with like audio drivers, I think. and general
Video drivers
user
too.
friendliness.
Video drivers.
Video drivers too.
Anyway, we love Linux,
um,
but still.
we do, but geez. Yeah, so that like we're big, and so like it can sound like overbearing that we would pull out a cannon like that, and like publicly say, hey, this SIG is responsible for blocking the Kubernetes release. But the amount of digital infrastructure around the world that relies on us directly is truly horrifying.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of terrifying when you realize that that's what you're responsible for. Like ultimately, I'm responsible for making sure that we safely release one of the single largest pieces of digital infrastructure in the world, with untold billions of dollars relying on us not releasing a massive piece of shit. So we have to be aggressive about defending things like, yes, this needs to be documented, or yes, this needs production readiness review before we can put it in a release. So like we're not trying to be draconian about it. I think it's reasonable to say, like, if a user can mess with it, you have to have documented it
Sure.
personally. But I don't know. Clearly, some people disagree and think that we should be able to yeet features with no docs.
Yeah, I mean, also just in general too, like the weight of it. Like you mentioned, like second largest thingy bob
Yeah,
behind Linux, which is just a crazy thing to say about anything. But I
yeah,
think like one of the things that I find fascinating too, especially kind of going back to like the transition in tech between Kubernetes hype, not Kubernetes hype, and then we kind of went through a couple of hype cycles around other technology. Now we're in this AI hype cycle, right?
oh yeah,
And obviously, we like to put like the dash native on things. Like there's cloud native and now there's
hmm
this AI native thing. And I'm generally curious, like for a team that has a lot of engineers, has a lot of people associated with it, like at what point in time do you look at like some AI capability and try to adopt it to make the process a bit more clean? Like obviously, I'd assume that most
yeah,
engineers that work on Kubernetes, they have Copilot or they have Cursor or they have Windsurf or they have whatever, right? But like
yeah.
obviously it's like the things outside of that like, what team looks at those sort of things and looks to adopt them? Is it just YOLO? Like, let's use this. Oh, let's not use this. I'd assume no, but I'm just genuinely curious.
In my experience, a lot of that decision making is not made by the team. It's made by management because somebody told them that if they use this, it'll increase productivity by 3,000% and it'll look good to VCs because then they can say they're an AI company. And the actual team that's consuming it frequently doesn't have a choice, right? Like they're just told they have to use this thing. Now, with Copilot and ChatGPT and shit like that, I think more people are like willingly choosing to embrace tooling like that. I'm not inherently opposed to it, but the overwhelming majority of AI tooling, I think, is slop designed to filch money out of VCs and get your bag. Okay, get that money, get out of the tech industry. I personally am trying to retreat into the mountains and never touch a computer professionally again. Uh, but it it is sometimes reading as a scam a little bit too transparently.
Sure.
You know, we're not immune to it in the Kubernetes project. We get a lot of like weird drive-by PRs from AI companies that are trying to use the Kubernetes project as marketing, which is
Mm,
really frustrating.
sure.
Hate that one. But also like we've had to adapt to the fact that people are using stuff like Copilot. Like we decided that we needed an explicit policy for AI generated code, and now we have one because it's inevitable. I think we're doing like a more aggressive version of that blockchain hype cycle from several years ago,
Sure.
where like everybody and their mother had some kind of blockchain tooling, right? Um, every job ad on LinkedIn was for some Web3 nonsense, and it was filching money out of VCs, and it was a big explosive hype cycle. We got a bajillion conferences about it, and a whole bunch of people trying to do like Web3 Kubernetes stuff. And then it slowly died out, and the companies that could implement blockchain technology in a way that was intelligent and genuinely useful quietly did so, and everybody else went out of business. And that's what's going to happen with the AI hype cycle too. People are using AI on Kubernetes. Go to KubeCon. There's always been a machine learning track,
Sure.
but now it's still the AI and ML track, but it's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of agentic uh, slop
Sure.
to me. So I don't know. Most of the time, teams are being forced to use something that they don't want to use. On an individual level, people are choosing to use it wherever they see toil. Like I do use Copilot sometimes, but I use it in the same way that I use like hotkeys in
Sure.
my IDE. Like it's just a slightly smarter version of the templating that I use. So I don't know. I don't have beef with that use of it. I have beef with people using it to generate things that they don't understand.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's kind of the general. I think we're reaching this consensus where it's like, don't trust, like, not to
Yeah.
anthropomorphize these things, but it's like, these things are not trustworthy because they're not things. Um, but
Yeah.
like,
It's not a person.
but also like, like you mentioned that the Web3 blockchain stuff, which I think is fascinating because the hype cycle was so short, right?
Yeah.
The amount of like, oh, we need to build our thingy bob blockchain on top of Kubernetes because then we're using the most sophisticated blah blah blah, right? And now with AI,
Yeah.
I almost feel like there's a lot of AI scenarios that I'm seeing that are like kind of going back to like you don't need distributed systems. Everything's local. Everything does this. Everything's kind of
Yeah.
encapsulated. Um, what's your kind of your like obviously Kubernetes being one of the textbook examples of like distributed systems and how you can implement it
Yep.
in a worldwide way, right? What do you
Mhm.
say to folks that might be, not particularly to AI, but like, do we need this amount of distribution? Like, because obviously it's your mileage may vary, but I'm genuinely curious, like, what you say to people if that say we don't need this.
With respect to like AI applications specifically, like a lot of them are running like the bulk of the work on something like Kubernetes, but the more sensitive stuff does happen locally. With things like RAG apps. There's like additional processing that happens locally while the bulk of the like big broad um, non-sensitive generative behavior happens like out on a cluster in space somewhere. Um, that I think is fine. I don't see a problem with that kind of setup. But with respect to like just doing less distributed computing in general, I don't know. The repatriation of the cloud or whatever. Who was that? Was that DHH? It was DHH.
Probably.
DHH went on some repatriation of the cloud bent when I was working at Dell. And so Dell obviously ate this shit up because he was buying Dell's servers.
Sure.
So I don't know how much of that hype towards doing things more locally or in private clouds at least is real, and how much of it is manufactured by hardware companies that want to sell more racks and have a fatter, juicier partnership with NVIDIA. I really can't tell how much of it is real. The cloud is not going
Oh,
away.
sure.
Distributed computing is not going away. It is far too convenient. It has far too many advantages, like doing everything locally or on a private cloud or whatever. That in some ways it is cheaper, right? Like you're not paying an EC2 bill, but since none of that stuff is managed for you, you are paying experts out the nose to manage it for you. Like, I don't think most people should be rolling their own Kubernetes cluster. I wouldn't roll my own Kubernetes cluster. I don't know what I'm doing well enough to do that safely, and I'm on the steering committee. You know,
Which is
it's
wild to say. Yeah,
sketchy.
yeah,
It is like
yeah.
there's just too much that can go wrong. Whereas like some managed service, like using GKE or whatever, it's going to babysit you through a lot of things. It's going to not make a lot of mistakes that a human easily could. So I don't know. There's advantages to both, but I think we're going to end up in a situation where distributed computing remains mostly dominant and specialized use cases
Yeah.
are doing things locally. Like it's the inverse. It used to be that distributed computing was for the specialized use case, and don't think that that's. I don't think we're going to go back to that.
Yeah,
Distributed is the default.
sure. No, I can't I definitely can't argue with that. I think too, like there's something to call out about like the level what level of abstraction you want, right? Yes,
Yeah.
like you can bare metal Kubernetes, you can raw dog it, like that's cool, right? Like managed service makes a bit more sense in a lot of cases. But then there's even like this stuff on top of it where it's like the system runs Kubernetes, but you don't touch any of it. Like
Yeah.
you can't fine tune pods, you can't configure nodes, you
Yep.
can't do any of these things, right? What
Hmm.
do you think about that? Where it's like it's so abstracted above, like, yes, you're running like some distributed system, but you don't touch any of the actual stuff. Like, even to the effect that it's like,
Hmm.
here's a container image, like, scale this out.
Uh, A, I love it. B, I think it's inevitable. Um, Building abstraction layers on top of something is literally all we've ever done
Yes.
since the ENIAC machine. Like that is all computers are. It is an abstraction layer slapped on top of something that we eventually found too complicated to do by hand. So great, love it. I would like to see more of it. I would like to see fewer people having to be like balls to the wall experts in directly operating a Kubernetes cluster. Um, that just is the way computers are going to go. Eventually, Kubernetes itself is going to become something you just straight up don't think about for most people. Um, like you don't think about you don't need to know how to write machine code, right? Do you know how to write machine code? I don't. I don't know how to write CPU instructions directly because I don't have to.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been necessary for the overwhelming majority of engineers to know how to do in decades. And the same thing will eventually happen with Kubernetes and other orchestrators. Like it'll become so buried in abstractions that only weird old guy experts
Yeah.
will know about. Eventually, I will be a weird old guy expert, and I'm honestly kind of excited about being a weird old guy expert.
Well, I mean,
But yeah,
I
I
think
don't want people to have to touch Kubernetes directly. It sucks. It's complicated.
well, I think too, like there's an argument in saying that there are more important things to worry about.
There
Right?
are.
Like, I can't remember who said it, but it's like most of the world's problems are solved. It's like connecting things that's really the problem, right? So like if I think
Yeah,
about something like okay, like you're using some version of distributed system, whether it's completely obfuscated away from you or it's bare metal Kubernetes, like you got to worry about container security. You got to worry about, you know, is your build and release process is it robust enough? And do you have like the right scaling configured, right? Like there are all these other things that we really care about. And like
yeah,
sometimes like the tool gets in the way of us trying to like solve the thing that we're trying to solve, right? Like just take
for sure.
like the container security stuff, right? Like you work at Minimus and folks who don't know Minimus is they kind of like they've kind of built this track record of like figuring out effective ways to like secure images, right? And I think one of the things that I find fascinating about that specifically is this is the problem that not a lot of people think about until like they step in shit, right?
Oh yeah,
So like,
for sure.
you want to talk just a little bit about, Minimus and like obviously I gave like the 1 million foot view, but also just like where a developer can take advantage of something like that.
Yeah. So first of all, we produce like minimal, usually zero or very close to it, just one or two CVE container images. I personally think it's cool because dev teams hate being told what to do by security teams,
Yep.
and also hate being handed tooling that creates more work for them. At least I did when I was an engineer. I was an embedded Linux engineer though, and we have like a really particular type of brain damage after a little while. But using something like Minimus is relatively low effort for a development team because you're just pulling an image from a different location. And you may have to install a little bit of additional tooling in the container itself because it comes with nothing besides the base you need.
Mm,
So it comes with nothing but Python, or nothing but Go, or nothing but Node.js, or whatever, or Git. I don't know. There's a bunch of them, and then it supports, air gapping and whatnot, and a whole ton of fancy security features like that that are a little bit of a pain to work with. But if you need air gapping, you're already used to that kind of thing. Um, but I've been a developer advocate for a long time, and I try not to work for companies that are selling products that I do not like
sure.
and I would not use personally. Um, and when I was an engineer, my number one thing was trying to reduce the amount of work, actual work I did, to get paid the same amount of money.
Sure.
And and this is definitely a thing that will do that for devs and for security teams. I think tools like this should be easy to use. They should be easy to work with. Um, and so far, it's pretty painless. I haven't run into any real trouble using it, aside from the fact that we're a pretty new company. So sometimes we don't have the base image I want. So I have to ask somebody to build it for me, and it
Sure.
takes like a week. But then we have it. So whatever. But tools like this are just they're a shortcut.
Yeah.
They're a great shortcut, but they are a shortcut to security. They don't mean that you get to ignore application security.
Yeah. Sure.
Just like with Kubernetes, Kubernetes is not secure by default. Don't let anybody tell you that. Using a tool like Minimus makes it easier to keep your application secure, for sure, but it does not guarantee security. So you do still need a security team. We're not eliminating the need for that, for sure. But it reduces your cognitive overhead.
Well,
You're
yeah.
not worried about the like 9 million CVEs that are in Nginx, or in it like an Alpine image of Nginx, because we stripped everything but Nginx from the image.
Yeah. No, I mean, back to the point that I made earlier, it's like the tool that works best for the job, right? Like,
Yeah,
for instance, like, walk me through a scenario. Like maybe like I have an image, I built an image myself that maybe it runs on Alpine and maybe it has Node and maybe it
yeah,
has some other things, right? Like, is it just a matter of me pointing my base image of my image to one of the Minimus images and parting like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of saying the Alpine image or whatever, you just pull ours. So if you need Nginx, like that is your base. That is the thing that you need to start with. Instead of pulling like a public Nginx image, from a public registry, you pull ours. And it is going to have absolutely nothing but Nginx in it. I think our Nginx image does currently have 0 CVEs in it. So anything else you need to build your application, you install in that image, starting from 0 CVEs. If you need a custom image, like you need more than just Nginx, you need a couple other pieces of tooling in there in the same image with also as close to 0 CVEs as possible. I mean, we'll build it for you. You just got to talk to one of us, and we can get it done. But yeah, like, to begin with, building your application, you straight up just pull a different image.
That I mean,
That's it.
that's about as simple as it gets, right?
It is,
And
yeah.
I do want to make a point. Like we've said CVE like 40 times in the last 2 minutes. Like CVE, for folks that might not know, it stands for like common vulnerabilities and what exposures, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
basically what it means is like bad things in it that can make an app go bad, do bad things, right? We've had some security folks on the show recently, so it's like all the things that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, basically limiting exposure from those sort of things. This is what we're talking about with minimal images that don't have these things in it. So imagine a world where, I don't know, what example did you give? Alpine might have, this is a
Yeah.
number, might have 400 million CVs. That's not the real number, but get my point. There's another
Yeah.
Alpine image that's provided by somebody else that has substantially less than that. Which one would you like to choose? I think that's the question that people should be asked.
Yeah. And when you think about, if we've got people potentially listening that don't know what a CVE is, a concrete example of this is, you remember a few years ago when Equifax got hacked and leaked like several hundred million Americans' social security numbers and financial information
Mm-hmm.
online? That was the result of a CVE, a vulnerability in an old unpatched version of a piece of open source software that they were relying on. It was a publicly disclosed CVE. So CVEs always get like posted online. You can go look at a vulnerability database and search them, and their new ones get posted regularly. And the deal with disclosure of CVEs is ideally, by the time a CVE is disclosed and a CVSS score and a number are assigned and it's posted everywhere online, ideally a new version of that software is out, wherein that vulnerability has been patched, it's been remedied. So in the case of the Equifax situation, that piece of open source software was called Apache Struts. There was a fixed version of it, and Equifax was not using it. And this is usually how these kind of vulnerabilities get exploited. People don't update
Yeah.
old versions of software that patch those vulnerabilities. So when you're pulling something like a Minimus image instead, every time Nginx gets a new CVE assigned to it and a new version of Nginx is released patching that CVE, if you're pulling our image, you are always going to get the latest fixed version. So as soon as Nginx patches it, we rebuild the image and you're pulling the patched version.
Yeah.
So you don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about becoming the next Equifax.
The caveat being is that you personally have to rebuild the image yourself, right? Like,
Nope, we do.
well, I mean, if you, so like, well, yes and no, right? Like, so if I have an app that's deployed based on some
Oh,
image,
your
yeah,
application,
yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. So like, but again, it's like the last thing that, like, the least amount of work that needs to get done, just like
yeah,
redeploying your app. I know redeploying apps sometimes isn't easy, but if
yeah,
it's literally, if it's just your base image updates a little bit,
yeah,
hopefully that doesn't break your entire application. Not to say that it won't, but if it does, there's probably other issues going on, right?
for
Um,
sure.
and I think too, like the idea of just getting bloat out of images is such an ideal thing. Like I've always talked with this about people. It's like, why would you take like this massive image that's like, one of the Linux images, right? For instance, like
Yeah,
you're taking Ubuntu or you're taking whatever. It's like, why?
they're
Like,
enormous.
why
Like,
are you taking like a 2 GB image just so you can have like whatever the 2 or 3 things that are on that OS that you need are, right?
yeah,
Like, shouldn't you be looking at options, especially if your app is like a web app? Like, do you need like an entire
you don't
OS?
need all that weight.
Yeah,
It's like that's so unnecessary. Like, straight up, it costs more money to run that.
yeah,
Like, it's just more. So why are you doing that? It's slower, it's more expensive, and it's less secure. So I don't know. That is embedded Linux developer brain rot. I think I try to have everything be like as small and slim as possible because I'm used to having to develop for applications with extremely limited resources, like physically. But everybody's tightening up their belt loops
yeah,
these days. So everybody's trying to spend less money. And a good way to do that is to not use whole ass Ubuntu
yeah.
when you need so much less than that.
Yeah, I think like also it does like decreases your build times, decreases your deploy times, obviously the point about taking less resources, like it just makes sense. And if you can assume that the image that you're taking has all the stuff in it,
Yep.
it's about as close to as secure as can be within reason. Like, it seems like an
Yep.
opportunity to take advantage of. So how do people like, I'm a developer. I'm like, man, that makes a lot of sense, Kat. Like, maybe I do need like an Nginx image, or I need like the simple Node.js image. Like, how do I get started?
You can go to minimus.io and request an account. Somebody can set one up for you. You can also email me and I will hassle somebody into doing it for you. My email address is cat@minimus.io. Um, you can email me for whatever. Actually, even if you just want to bullshit, that's fine. I need something to do. But yeah, if you want to set up an account, we can get that rolling for you. Your boss will have to talk to a sales guy, probably, but whatever. Um, if you just want to see it go, I am happy to either do a demo for you or have somebody do a demo for you. You can also come see us at conferences. We have stupid merch
No
because they
merch is
let me have
stupid.
control of it.
No merch is
Oh,
stupid. What do we
You
got?
know those like really tiny plastic hands?
Yeah, the clapper ones,
No, it's just a
the
hand.
one that goes in your
It's literally
fingertip.
just a yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Okay. So we bought a fuckload of those
okay.
on a whim for KubeCon North America. And it was so unsettling that we ordered branded ones for the next conference. So I don't know. They let me have way too much control over marketing credit cards.
I mean,
Um,
so this is my opinion on swag, right? It has to be memorable.
oh yeah.
Not to knock the people that do the socks or the t-shirt or whatever. Like that's cool, but like if you come home and you're like, "What is this?" Like the company that made that swag won because
Oh yeah.
there's I mean like look, we all use the same tools, we all use the same companies to get swag produced, right? Um so like if you can go like one extra little step weirder, like people that'll resonate with people. Plus, I think it kind of also correlates. It's like, oh, we're not corporate overlords. Like we're not going to give you a T-shirt with our logo on it. Like we're going to give you
Yeah.
something that's a bit silly.
Yeah, I mean, I personally do not take t-shirts from companies or water bottles or socks or any of that because I am not a walking billboard. It's a hard no for me, dog. I only take it if the swag is like really high quality or if it's fucking weird. Like really really weird. Actually, or useful. Intel gave out Allen keys. Like it was a
Oh,
multi-tool of just like every size of Allen key you could possibly ever need, like a million years ago. And I still have that. Twill gave out ponytail holders a long time ago. That stuck with me. Um, when I worked at Palumi, I gave away cat ears once.
cat ears is good.
And I thought that was good. That was good. And now we're doing tiny hands. So
Tiny hands is good
come
too. I need to get a tiny hand. So
there,
whenever any
I'll give you
KubeCon,
5 of them. They're really off-putting.
well, I mean, it would just be just so my wife can go, "What are you doing?" And then I'll say, "Yes,
Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm doing."
correct. Like they're off-putting. I was walking around the conference with one on each hand and just like shaking people's hands that way.
Oh, so good.
It it was really upsetting. Currently, I'm trying to get whoopee cushions. We'll see how that goes.
All right.
Having a real hard time getting branded whoopee cushions. Limited number of factories for that,
Sure,
turns out.
sure, sure.
But
Also, the demand for branded whoopee cushions is quite low, I'd imagine. Probably like one
quite
step
low.
below like, branded small hands.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's
but
it's a struggle.
I don't know where to
You
go
gotta
from
have fun
this.
at work, dude.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but it's like, from a transition perspective, it's like, how do I transition away from silly hands? Um, this conversation has been great. I think that, one, since the last time we spoke, like your kind of responsibilities have changed a lot, and but I appreciate that your opinions have stayed very similar, which I think is good, because to quote you a bit earlier, it's like weird old person, right? Like you haven't gotten there yet, which I mean maybe you still have the same opinions when you're a weird old person, who knows? Um, but it's really really good to catch up with you and kind of hear what your day to day is like, especially helping ship the second largest piece of software or system or whatever you want to call it that exists, because I think that's fascinating. And for folks that already aren't following Kat, she's in a bunch of different places. One place is on Blue Sky, cat.lol. There'll also be some other links to some places in the show notes for this, and there'll also be a link to minimus.io, so you can kind of take a look at some of the cool things they're doing over there. Before we sign off, my friend, do you have any parting words?
Ooh, yeah, be so nice to open source maintainers, please.
Yes.
We are in fact working for free. Like I get to do this as part of my day job, but the overwhelming majority of people, even on the steering committee, are doing this for free in their spare time. So they're working like 40, 50 hours a week on their actual job, and then they're doing this like 10, 15, 20 hours of work in an open source project for free,
Yeah.
in addition to that. And it sucks. So, think of that before you be too demanding of any of us. And think of that when we do something like delay a release. Because it's not always the delays are usually not because we had to threaten somebody, it's because we don't want to overwork our team.
Yeah.
and we'll always choose to delay a release before we make the team work on weekends. So be nice to open source maintainers. And if you yourself would like to take a shot at contributing to Kubernetes, you can apply to be on the Kubernetes release team. I'll open the Shadow application later this week, but it opens 3 times a year. Just watch the SIG release channel in the Kubernetes Slack workspace, and you'll get a notification when it opens.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can be a part of shipping very, very big software, which I heard
Yep,
goes really, really good on your LinkedIn and resume. I heard that. Um,
it does.
so again, this has been great catching up with you, Kat. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank the people that are watching this live, as well as the folks listening in the future. My name is Isaac Levin. This has been Coffee and Open Source, and for my friend Kat, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care.
You too.